A German Shepherd is brought to say goodbye to a dying baby. But what he does in that hospital room forces doctors to reopen a case they had already closed. In the sterile silence of a NICU, a mother is losing her only child. The medical team has run out of answers. The machines are the only thing keeping him alive. And then Courage, a therapy German Shepherd, is smuggled in for one final goodbye. At first, it seems like a moment of grace, a gentle farewell between an animal and a child. But within seconds, everything changes. Courage doesn't curl up beside the baby. He goes into full alert mode, pawing frantically at the oxygen line, growling at the medication cart, obsessively sniffing a ventilation grate in the wall. This isn't grief. This is detection. He's found something. Nurses freeze. The mother begs them to listen. But the hospital administrator wants him removed immediately. There's a high-profile pharmaceutical event tomorrow, and nothing can jeopardize it. What is Courage trying to tell them? What deadly secret is hidden in that hospital room? And when the truth finally comes out, will it be too late to save not just this baby, but others in danger? Sometimes the truth doesn't come from doctors or machines. It comes from instincts that can't be silenced. I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Type it down below. And while you're here, subscribe so you never miss a story that matters. The monitors in the NICU beep in a slow, haunting rhythm, each tone a reminder that time is running out. Michelle Grenell sits beside her son's incubator, her palm pressed flat against the clear plastic barrier that separates her from 6-month-old Kester. The warmth of her hand fogs the surface slightly, and she traces the outline of his tiny fingers with her own. His chest rises and falls with mechanical precision, assisted by machines that have become his lifeline. Tubes snake from his arms, his nose, his fragile body, each one a tether to a hope that's slipping away. A small tuft of dark hair curls at his temple, and Michelle reaches through the incubator's access port to smooth it gently, the way she used to when he'd fall asleep in her arms. "Hey, baby boy," she whispers, her voice cracking despite her effort to sound strong. "Mama's still here." The NICU hums with quiet efficiency around her. Nurse Vicky moves between stations with practiced care, her eyes soft with sympathy every time they meet Michelle's. She adjusts Kester's 4-line and checks the ventilator settings, then places a hand briefly on Michelle's shoulder, a gesture that says everything words can't. "Dr. Marshall will be in soon," Vicky says gently, though her tone carries a weight Michelle has learned to recognize. Michelle's stomach tightens. She's spent enough time in this hospital to read the subtle shifts, the way staff avoid eye contact, the careful pauses before they speak, the way compassion replaces optimism in their voices. Something has changed. And not for the better. When Dr. Marshall enters, his usual confident stride is absent. He pulls up a rolling stool beside Michelle, and she feels the room tilt before he even opens his mouth. "Michelle," he begins, and the use of her first name, not Ms. Grenell, tells her everything. "We've tried every antibiotic, every antiviral, every experimental protocol we have access to. Kester's condition continues to deteriorate, and we don't understand why. His body isn't responding to anything." Michelle's hands grip the edge of the incubator. There has to be something else. Another specialist. Another treatment. Dr. Marshall's eyes hold genuine sorrow. "We've consulted with neonatologists across the country. At this point, all we can do is keep him comfortable and—" "No." The word escapes her lips like a reflex, sharp, desperate, defiant. "He's fought this hard. He's made it this far. There has to be something." Dr. Marshall doesn't argue. He simply nods slowly, the kind of nod that means "I understand your pain, but the answer won't change." After he leaves, Michelle sits in the crushing silence, staring at her son's small, struggling body. And then she remembers something, a moment from weeks ago, when things weren't so dire, when Kester's eyes would still light up at the sight of a visitor. Courage. The therapy German Shepherd who used to visit the pediatric ward. The dog whose gentle presence had brought Kester more comfort than any medicine ever had. Michelle's heart clenches with a sudden, fierce determination. If the doctors have given up, maybe someone else hasn't. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting their sterile glow across every surface of the NICU. Michelle Grenell sat hunched in the chair beside Kester's incubator, her body aching from days of sleepless vigil, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. The world beyond this room had ceased to exist. There was only the rhythm of machines, the rise and fall of her son's chest, and the suffocating weight of waiting. Dr. Marshall entered quietly, his clipboard held against his chest like a shield. He'd been Kester's attending neonatologist since the beginning, and Michelle had come to trust his steady voice, his careful explanations. But today, something in his posture made her stomach drop. He pulled the stool close and sat down, meeting her eyes with a look that carried too much sorrow. "Michelle," he said gently, "we've tried everything. The antibiotics, the antivirals, the experimental treatments, nothing is working. Kester's systems are shutting down, and we don't know why." The words landed like blows. Michelle's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, the room seemed to tilt. She looked at her son, his tiny body so pale now, so different from the plump, pink baby who had smiled at her just weeks ago. He'd been thriving, laughing, reaching for her fingers with those impossibly small hands. Now he lay motionless, swallowed by tubes and wires, his skin almost translucent under the harsh lights. "There has to be something," Michelle whispered, her voice breaking. "Another doctor. Another treatment. Anything." Dr. Marshall's silence was answer enough. Michelle pressed her hands to her face, trying to hold herself together, trying not to shatter completely. Her mind raced through memories, Kester's first smile, the way he'd giggle when she kissed his belly, the soft weight of him in her arms. And then, through the fog of grief, another memory surfaced. Courage. The therapy German shepherd who used to visit the pediatric ward during Kester's earlier hospital stays. She remembered the way Kester's eyes would light up when the dog approached, the way his tiny hand would reach out to touch the soft fur. Courage had brought more comfort than any medicine ever could, a moment of warmth in the cold machinery of illness. Michelle looked up at Dr. Marshall, desperation sharpening her voice. "Can Courage come visit Kester one more time? Just to say goodbye?" Dr. Marshall's expression softened with sympathy, but he shook his head slowly. "I wish I could authorize that, Michelle. I really do. But therapy animal visits in the NICU require administrative approval, especially for critical cases. You'd need to speak with Dr. Beatrice Robinson, the hospital administrator." Michelle's heart sank. She'd seen Dr. Robinson in passing, polished, efficient, always surrounded by staff with clipboards and schedules. The kind of person who dealt in policies, not people. "Will she approve it?" Michelle asked, though she already feared the answer. Dr. Marshall hesitated. "I can't say. But you should try. If anyone deserves that comfort, it's Kester." He stood, placing a hand briefly on Michelle's shoulder before leaving her alone again with the machines and the unbearable quiet. Michelle stared at her son, her jaw tightening with a fierce, fragile determination. If the doctors have given up, maybe someone else hasn't. She would find Dr. Robinson. She would beg if she had to. Kester deserved one last moment of peace. Michelle stepped into the sterile administrative office, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic. The walls were adorned with awards and donor plaques, each one a testament to the institution's successes, framed photographs of ribbon-cutting ceremonies capturing moments of celebration and progress. Yet, in this moment, none of that mattered to her. She felt small among the accolades, a mere shadow in a place that thrived on achievements and standards far removed from her desperate reality. Dr. Robinson sat behind a sleek, modern desk, her demeanor polished and professional. With her perfectly coiffed hair and tailored suit, she exuded an air of authority that felt impenetrable to Michelle. As the doctor's gaze met hers, it was clear that Michelle's emotional plea would not sway her. "I understand your emotional state, Ms. Grenell," Dr. Robinson began, her voice steady and clinical, "but we have strict infection control protocols in the NICU. Introducing an animal, even a therapy dog, poses unacceptable risks to other patients." Each word was delivered with a practiced precision that cut through Michelle's heart like a knife. "Please," Michelle implored, her voice trembling as she fought to keep her composure. "Kester is isolated, and Courage is certified and clean. This is his last chance for comfort. He needs this." She could feel the weight of her words pressing against her chest, desperate to break through the fortress of bureaucracy that stood before her. But Dr. Robinson's expression remained unchanged, her resolve as solid as the awards on the walls. We're also hosting a major pharmaceutical partnership announcement this week. The media will be touring the facility. We cannot afford any irregularities. The finality in her tone made it clear that any hope of compromise was dashed. Michelle's heart sank, a wave of despair crashing over her. She felt powerless, like a tiny boat adrift in a stormy sea, tossed about by forces beyond her control. Yet, as she turned to leave the office, something shifted within her. The grief that had wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud began to harden into something else: determination. Each step away from Dr. Robinson's office felt lighter, fueled by a newfound resolve. She would not let this obstacle define her or her son's final days. Michelle knew that the walls of bureaucracy were cold and unyielding, but she was not ready to retreat. There had to be a way through, a path that would lead her back to Kester, to the comfort of courage, to the warmth of a bond that transcended the sterile walls of the NICU. As she walked down the brightly lit corridor, each step echoed with the heartbeat of her determination. The sterile environment around her faded into the background, overshadowed by the fierce love she held for her son. She would find a way to break through the wall of bureaucracy, to challenge the rigid protocols that threatened to steal away the last flicker of hope. Michelle was ready to fight, not just for Kester, but for every moment that could still be shared. That evening, as the fluorescent lights of the neonatal unit cast a soft glow, Michelle found herself lost in thought beside Kester's incubator. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors was a constant reminder of the fragile life within, and the weight of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. It was then that Nurse Vicky approached quietly, her footsteps barely making a sound on the sterile floor. Vicky had become more than just a caregiver. She was a lifeline, a comforting presence who had nurtured not just Kester but the bond between mother and child. "I heard what Dr. Robinson said," Vicky whispered, her voice laced with concern. "It's not right. If you want courage here, I know someone who can help." With a gentle yet decisive motion, she slipped a business card into Michelle's hand. It bore the name Kenneth Thomason, a man who had once worked with military canines, now a guardian of sorts for those in need. "Call him. Tell him Vicky sent you." The next morning, the coffee shop near the hospital buzzed with life, but Michelle felt a world apart as she awaited Kenneth's arrival. When he entered, his presence was commanding, a man in his late 50s, weathered by experience, and yet there was an unmistakable kindness in his eyes. Beside him, Courage, a magnificent German shepherd with a noble bearing, exuded calmness, an anchor in the storm of emotions swirling around Michelle. "Vicky told me about your son," Kenneth said, his tone direct, devoid of the usual platitudes. "I'm sorry. Courage and I will help however we can." As Michelle poured out her heart, detailing the barriers that stood between Kester and the comfort of Courage's presence, she noticed the tightening of Kenneth's jaw, a silent acknowledgement of the bureaucracy that often prioritized protocols over compassion. "I've dealt with bureaucrats who care more about image than people," he said, determination etched on his face. "If you want courage in that hospital, we'll get him there. But we'll need inside help." Enter Nurse Jessie Higgins, a night shift warrior with a heart full of empathy. When Vicky introduced them, Jess's eyes sparkled with understanding. "I'll help," she declared, her voice firm, the resolve of a mother behind her words. "But we have to be smart about this. The night shift is lighter, security does rounds every 2 hours, and there's a service entrance near the loading dock that's only monitored by a single camera, which conveniently malfunctions sometimes." With a plan taking shape, hope began to flicker in Michelle's chest. Tomorrow night, they would bring Courage to Kester, a moment of compassion forged in the shadows of a hospital that often forgot the human spirit in its machinery. The conspiracy of compassion was underway, and Michelle felt a surge of gratitude for the allies she had found in this fight for her son's comfort. At 11:47 p.m., the air was thick with tension as Kenneth and Courage approached the hospital's loading dock. The quiet was almost palpable, broken only by the distant hum of machinery. Waiting for them was Jessie, whose calm demeanor belied the gravity of the mission. She had managed to accidentally disable the security camera, a small but crucial victory in their covert operation. With a nod, she beckoned them forward, her whispers directing them through the maze of service corridors that twisted away from the main halls. Stay quiet, move fast, and if anyone asks, you're with environmental services, Jessie instructed, her voice steady yet urgent. Each word was a reminder of the risk they were taking, the thin line between hope and failure. They moved with purpose, skirting the edges of the hospital's heartbeat, where the bustle of life was replaced by the sterile silence of the behind-the-scenes world. Courage moved with grace and discipline, his training evident in every silent step, his presence both calming and powerful. Michelle's heart raced, not just from the fear of being caught but from the desperate hope that this moment could bring her son peace. The shadows of the corridors seemed to close in around them, a stark reminder of the stakes. With each turn, she felt the weight of her determination, fueled by the love for Kester that burned brightly within her. Finally, they reached the NICU. Jessie approached the security door with the confidence of someone who had navigated these halls countless times. With a quick swipe of her access card, the lock clicked open, and they slipped inside. The ward was dimly lit, the soft glow of monitors casting flickering shadows on the walls. Most of the staff were focused on the central monitoring station, oblivious to the small rebellion unfolding just beyond their sight. Jessie led them to Kester's isolated room, her expression a mix of urgency and encouragement. You have maybe 15 minutes before the next security round, she warned, her eyes darting to the clock on the wall. Make it count. With a deep breath, Michelle opened the door, her heart pounding in her chest. Kenneth gently guided Courage inside, the majestic dog immediately sensing the vulnerability of the tiny occupant in the incubator. In that moment, the world outside faded away, leaving only the fragile hope that this covert mission would not only breach the barriers of the hospital but also the walls surrounding her son's heart. Michelle expects Courage to approach Kester's incubator gently, perhaps to lay his head near the baby as he had done during previous therapy visits. But the moment Courage enters the room, everything changes. The dog's entire demeanor shifts. His ears snap forward, his body goes rigid, and his nose begins working the air with intense focus. This isn't the calm, comforting presence of a therapy dog. This is the precise, urgent behavior of a detection animal. Courage moves directly to Kester's incubator, but instead of offering comfort, he begins pawing at the oxygen line connection. He whines sharply, then moves to the medication cart, sniffing frantically at the drawers. His attention then fixes on a ventilation grate low on the wall. He scratches at it, growls, and begins barking, short, insistent alerts. What's he doing? Michelle asks, confused and frightened. Kenneth's face goes pale. His alerting. This is detection behavior. Courage is trained to find explosives and hazardous materials. He's found something. Before they can investigate further, the door bursts open. Dr. Beatrice Robinson stands in the doorway, flanked by a security guard. What is the meaning of this? Dr. Robinson's voice is ice. You've violated every protocol, endangered patients, Anne. His alerting to something, Kenneth interrupts, his voice hard. This dog has years of detection training. When he behaves like this, it means there's a hazard. Dr. Robinson's eyes narrow. The only hazard here is your unauthorized presence. Security, escort them out. Nurses Higgins and Vicky, you're both suspended pending investigation. Michelle steps between Dr. Robinson and Courage. My son is dying, and this dog is trying to tell us something. You're going to listen. I don't have time for conspiracy theories from a grieving mother and a dog, Dr. Robinson snaps. The pharmaceutical partnership announcement is in 2 days. I will not have this facility's reputation compromised by hysteria. Kenneth pulls at Courage's collar, but the dog resists, still fixated on the ventilation grate. His barking grows more frantic, more desperate. The security guard moves forward, hand on his radio, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating situation. Nurse Higgins appears in the doorway behind Dr. Robinson, her face stricken, knowing her career hangs in the balance but unable to look away from Courage's behavior. This is your final warning, Dr. Robinson says, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Leave now, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing and endangering patients." Michelle's hands shake as she looks between her dying son and the administrator blocking their path to answers. Kenneth places a steadying hand on her shoulder, but his jaw is set with determination. They're being forced out, but both know what they witnessed. Courage doesn't make mistakes. Whatever he detected in that room, whatever triggered his training, it's real. As security escorts them down the corridor, Courage continues to pull backward, his eyes locked on Kester's room, his whines echoing off the sterile walls. The seed of doubt has been planted, and it's already taking root. The next morning, Jessie Higgins, now suspended but still determined, meets Michelle at a diner outside the hospital. She brings a stack of printed medical charts, Kester's records and those of 3 other NICU patients. "I couldn't sleep after last night," Jessie says, spreading the documents across the table. "So I started looking at timelines. Look at this." She points to the dates. Kester's decline started exactly 3 weeks ago. So did the deterioration of 2 other babies in the NICU. All 3 cases have baffled the doctors: resistant to treatment, mysterious symptoms, rapid decline. "What changed 3 weeks ago?" Michelle asks. Jessie pulls out another document, a hospital memo. 3 weeks ago, the hospital completed a ventilation system upgrade in the NICU, sponsored by our new pharmaceutical partner. It was supposed to improve air quality and reduce infection risk. Michelle's blood runs cold. Courage was alerting to the ventilation grate. Jessie nods grimly. "I think something in that ventilation system is poisoning our babies. And I think Dr. Robinson knows, or at least suspects, but she's covering it up because the pharmaceutical company that funded the upgrade is the same one announcing the partnership in 2 days." Michelle stares at the charts, her hands trembling. The patterns are undeniable. 3 babies, all in rooms serviced by the new ventilation system, all declining in perfect synchronization with the upgrade's completion. She traces her finger across Kester's vital signs chart, watching the steady downward trajectory that began the moment the new system went live. "There's more," Jessie says quietly, pulling out a final page. "I checked the maintenance logs. The ventilation filters haven't been changed since installation. Protocol requires weekly replacement in the NICU. Someone authorized an exemption, citing proprietary filter technology from the pharmaceutical company." Who authorized it? Dr. Robinson herself. The weight of it settles over them both. This isn't just negligence. This is a deliberate choice to prioritize a business partnership over patient safety. Michelle thinks of Kester's tiny body fighting an invisible enemy, of the other babies suffering the same fate, of parents who don't yet know their children are being slowly poisoned by the very air meant to heal them. "We need proof," Michelle says, her voice hardening with resolve. "We need to get Courage back in there." Jessie meets her eyes across the table, and in that moment, they both understand what they are risking. Their reputations, their careers, possibly their freedom. But 3 babies are dying, and time is running out. Kenneth, Michelle, and Jessie devise a bolder plan. The pharmaceutical partnership announcement is scheduled for the next afternoon, with a media tour of the NICU. Kenneth will attend as a hospital safety consultant with Courage as a certified facility detection animal, credentials he actually holds from his military service. Kenneth prepares Courage with his professional detection harness, complete with official insignia. He briefs the dog, "We're going to work, buddy. Find it." They arrive during the media setup. Dr. Robinson is too busy managing reporters and pharmaceutical executives to notice Kenneth and Courage entering the NICU under the guise of a routine safety inspection. Kenneth releases Courage to sweep the area. The dog immediately returns to Kester's room and goes straight to the ventilation grate. His alert is unmistakable: intense sniffing, pawing, sitting, the classic indication of a confirmed detection. Kenneth kneels and examines the grate. Using a flashlight, he peers inside. What he sees makes his stomach turn: dark, fuzzy growth covering the interior ductwork. Mold. Extensive, toxic mold. "We need to shut this system down now," Kenneth says urgently to a nearby nurse. But Dr. Robinson has spotted them. She strides into the room, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Mr. Thomason, you are not authorized to be here. Leave immediately." "There's toxic mold in your ventilation system," Kenneth says bluntly. "It's been poisoning these babies. Courage detected it, and I've confirmed it visually. You need to evacuate this ward and call in environmental hazard specialists." Dr. Robinson's expression doesn't change. "That's absurd. Our systems are inspected regularly. You're disrupting a critical event based on the behavior of a dog." "Security. Look for yourself," Kenneth insists, pointing to the grate. Dr. Robinson glances at the vent but doesn't move to inspect it. "I'm not entertaining this circus." The media event proceeds as scheduled. Michelle, who has been recording the exchange on her phone from the doorway, steps forward. "You're willing to let babies die to protect your reputation?" "I'm protecting this hospital from baseless accusations," Dr. Robinson counters. "Now all of you, leave, or I'll have you arrested." Kenneth stands his ground, Courage still sitting in perfect alert position beside the grate. The dog hasn't moved, hasn't broken his trained behavior, because his job isn't finished. In the hallway, voices grow louder as reporters begin moving toward the NICU for the scheduled tour. Michelle's phone continues recording, capturing every word, every refusal to investigate. "Those reporters are about to walk into a contaminated ward," Kenneth says, his voice low and dangerous. "And you're going to let them, just like you've let these babies breathe poison for 3 weeks. Dr. Robinson's jaw tightens, but before she can respond, security guards appear at the door, hands moving toward Kenneth and Michelle. The NICU gleamed under the television lights. Reporters toured the state-of-the-art facility, cameras documenting the new equipment as Dr. Beatrice Robinson, sharp and smiling, spoke eloquently about the hospital's unwavering commitment to cutting-edge neonatal care for the auditors and pharmaceutical executives. Every handshake and every posed photograph reinforced the hospital's polished facade of perfection. But just down the hallway, outside the critical zone, Michelle Grenell, Kenneth Thomason, and Courage hadn't left. Kenneth's jaw was set, his professional patience shattered by the administrator's arrogance. "I'm calling the fire marshal," Kenneth stated firmly to Michelle, pulling out his phone. "If she won't listen to a SAR specialist, they will listen to an official department." Before his thumb could hit the dial, the German Shepherd exploded into motion. Courage lunged toward the NICU entrance, emitting a sudden, frantic series of high-pitched barks unlike any alert he had given before. Kenneth rushed after him, and what he saw pouring through the ventilation grates confirmed his absolute worst fears. A faint, acrid, hazy smoke was beginning to seep into the corridor. The smell was sharp and metallic, not just the musty odor of mold. "That's not just water damage," Kenneth snapped, his SAR training taking over. "The contamination in the experimental HVAC system is causing a chemical reaction. This whole ward is becoming instantly toxic." He didn't waste a second seeking authorization. Kenneth slammed his hand down on the nearest fire alarm pull station. Chaos erupted. The siren's blare was deafening, immediately followed by the rush of water as the sprinklers activated. Staff began frantically moving cribs, incubators, and children toward the exit points. Dr. Robinson burst out of the NICU, her face a mask of furious, terrified panic, screaming at Kenneth, but her voice was instantly drowned out by the alarm and the sudden, chaotic rush of medical personnel moving vulnerable infants. Michelle didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and began filming everything. Dr. Robinson's reckless, desperate attempts to stop the evacuation to save her reputation, the visible, sickening haze pouring from the ceiling vents, Courage's persistent, focused alerts, and the panicked, emergency removal of infants from the toxic zone. The fire department arrived within minutes, immediately followed by hazmat teams. They confirmed Kenneth's grim assessment: dangerous levels of toxic gas, a lethal byproduct of the faulty experimental ventilation system, contaminating the entire ward. The NICU was declared unsafe and fully evacuated. Kester was rushed to a nearby hospital with a clean facility, leaving the compromised facility behind. That same night, Michelle posted her video. There was no editing, no embellishment, just the raw, desperate, and undeniable truth. The footage captured Dr. Robinson's frantic dismissal of the contamination warnings, her voice tight with panic as she ordered staff to ignore the alerts. It showed the administrator attempting to physically silence Kenneth's warnings, prioritizing the preservation of the media event over the lives of the babies. Crucially, the video documented the visible, sickening haze pouring from the ventilation grates, Courage's precise, professional detection alerts, and the subsequent, chaotic emergency evacuation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The video went viral within hours, spreading far beyond local news to national and international outlets. The hashtag #CourageTheDog trended worldwide, transforming a family tragedy into a massive public demand for institutional accountability. The hospital was forced to respond, immediately placing Dr. Robinson on administrative leave. An independent investigation was launched, which revealed the full scope of the negligence. The ventilation upgrade was a cost-cutting measure improperly installed by a contractor with financial ties to the very pharmaceutical vendor the hospital was celebrating. The faulty system had been systematically leaking high levels of toxic mold spores and chemical byproducts, the exact cocktail that had led to Kester's rapid decline, into the NICU's air for 3 weeks. Records showed that 4 babies, including Kester, had been actively poisoned. Worse still, evidence confirmed the administration had received early warning signs from maintenance staff but had actively suppressed them for weeks to avoid delaying the lucrative partnership announcement and the critical audit. The reckoning was swift. Dr. Beatrice Robinson was summarily terminated and quickly faced potential criminal charges for reckless endangerment. The pharmaceutical partnership was immediately dissolved in disgrace, and the hospital was subjected to a massive regulatory review. Meanwhile, the brave nurses Vicky and Jessie Higgins were reinstated with full commendations for their courage and moral integrity. Most importantly, Kester began his recovery. Removed from the toxic environment, his symptoms improved dramatically within days. The insidious toxins were purged from his system, and his tiny body, no longer under chemical assault, finally began to heal itself. The terminal diagnosis was rescinded. 2 weeks later, Michelle brought Kester, now alert, pink, and gaining weight, back to meet his hero. Kenneth brought Courage to the new, clean hospital for an official, quiet visit. This time, there were no alerts, no frantic warnings, only peace. Courage gently approached the crib, and Kester reached out with a tiny, determined hand, grasping the dog's soft, warm ear. Courage's tail wagged slowly and purposefully. His job was done. The hospital where Kester was saved implemented sweeping reforms, mandatory environmental monitoring, independent safety audits, and a strict new policy that patient safety concerns could never be suppressed for financial or reputational reasons. A small, understated plaque was installed in the new, safe NICU, in honor of Courage, guardian and hero. Michelle held her healthy son close, tears streaming down her face, not tears of grief this time, but of profound, eternal gratitude. Her baby was alive because a dog wouldn't stop trying to tell the truth, and because a mother refused to give up.
Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, you're exactly the kind of person we create these for. Like, subscribe, and share to keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay kind.